Hi, Tim Unkert here. In this video, we are going to do a crash course on HTML. And this will cover a lot of HTML to get you started. And HTML is a language used by all the websites out there, whether it be WordPress, which uses a PHP to render the HTML, or just plain HTML sites or whatever. The front face that you're seeing, the structure, is the HTML. CSS is the styling. So if you just did HTML, you would get a site that looks like the 90s, but sometimes that's kind of cool. All right, we're going to go through HTML, and you're going to learn a lot of the things from HTML from this tutorial. All right, so let's get started. What you're going to need is you're going to need some kind of text editor to write in. And I'm bringing up a text editor called NeoVim here. It's the GUI version of NeoVim, which you can actually get on Linux. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make a file, okay? And the file is going to be called index.html, okay? So I'm going to select the index.html, and we're going to start going through some of the things that is cool in HTML. Now, when we do this, one thing I'll be doing is commenting in the code. Now, the comments you won't see in the actual HTML. So first thing I'm going to do is show you how to make a comment. So we do this left arrow bracket here, then an exclamation point, then two dashes. That starts the comment. This is a comment, and then two dashes and an arrow that closes out the comment. Okay. So we won't be able to see this on the browser, and I'll show you in a minute. You can't see this when you visit a site. Okay. So I just saved that file, and I'm going to open up my files here. I'm on a Linux or a Chromebook running Linux. So we'll go to teaching code and the crash course. We're going to go here, and we are going to view it, and that's going to view it in the Chrome browser. And you notice you don't see anything here, okay? But when you view the page source, you can see that there's the comment, right? So it's not going to show up to the person visiting the site, but you can comment your code, and that helps to organize it a bit better. Okay, so let's go back and keep going, all right? Okay, so typically when you start an HTML file, you want to declare the doc type. So this is how we declare the doc type. You have the left arrow, exclamation, doc type, HTML. And let me go back here, and you capitalize doc type, okay? And then you have your opening HTML tags and your closing HTML tags, okay? Within those tags, you're going to have the head of the document and the body of the document. Now, the part that the person viewing the website is going to see is going to be the body of the document, not the head. But the head gives the information to robots from Google that are going and trying to figure out what your site is about. So you want to put important information there. And one of the things you want to put in the head of your document is you want to have basically meta information. So one thing you want to add is the character set, and you want that to be UTF-8, and you want the UTF to be actually capitalized, although sometimes it doesn't always do that, or people don't always do that, but you do want to do that. Okay. All right. So, and let me actually mess with my color here a little bit so you can see this a little bit nicer. Let's try Delic. Okay. So comments are in red. Nah, I don't like that. Let's do our default. Don't like that. Let's do desert. That's kind of nice to see. It's a little bit better to view. Okay. So that's the first meta care set or meta tag that you want. The next one is one that is called viewport. So you type meta space name and then in quotes viewport. Then you have to type content and you want to type width equals device width, initial scale equals 1.0, and close your quotes there, close the bracket there. Okay, that's going to help to mobile optimize your site. Okay, so you could just type plain HTML and have that, and you could still read it on a phone. And in fact, there are still some sites out there that are just plain HTML code, and they're actually pretty useful for information. So maybe you want to do your blog in just plain HTML. Who knows? All right, so those are two that are required. The next one is one you should have, and that's the description. So you start again, same meta name equals description, and then you want to describe something for the search engine. So I would say for this is a crash course in HTML in 2021. Okay, and then you want to include your title. So you have an opening title tag and a closing title tag. A lot of HTML elements will have an opening and a closing tag. And you notice all these tags are in between these two brackets here. So you always do that. Now the closing tag here, it's going to be the same, except we have this / and then title. Okay, and that's the way most of the HTML tags are, is you have that / and the title. Some of them are self-closing tags, but for the most part, you do it this way. Now, in between the title tags, you want to put your actual title. So I would say for this 2021 HTML crash course, something like that. Something that describes what it's about. Okay. Also in the head of the document is a place where you could link in a style sheet, but that's CSS. We're not doing that for this tutorial. So if we want just a plain HTML site, the browser defaults will give us a little bit of padding, and we'll see the HTML in the browser, the standard form. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and what I'm going to do now is go back to our site and hit Control-R to refresh. And you'll notice we still aren't seeing anything because we've just put stuff in the head of the document. So, but if we view the page source, we'll notice we have this stuff in the head of the document there. And that's pretty cool. Okay, so now we can start, and we're going to create our body of our document, and we're going to go through a bunch of HTML stuff, okay, tags and that kind of stuff. So the head you want to have in your document, it's important. And then after that, you can have a ton of combination of different tags to get your content. So we're going to have an opening body tag, and we also have a closing body tag. And the one thing you'll notice with this text editor that I'm using is it's indenting automatically for me. Now I have it set to indent 2 spaces, although I don't think I set tabs to spaces, because you notice in this different browser, when I view the page source, the indents are a little differently. So I probably should do that. You want to be consistent with that. But the important thing is you do want to have those indents, because that doesn't matter for the browser. You don't have to indent it all, and it'll look at the exact same. Like I could have all of my tags lined up against the left side here, and it wouldn't affect how the browser renders the content. That being said, for people to read the code that your browser interprets, you do want the indenting. So basically, like subsets of the head, will be indented to the right. And the head is a subset of all the HTML, so that's indented to the right. So a subset is indented to the right. So that kind of helps you figure out where something is located in the content. All right, so let's go back. We'll go back to our text editor, and now we're going to go and we're going to start to talk about some HTML stuff. So if I want to write a simple paragraph, I'm going to start with a paragraph tag, and I'm going to have a closing paragraph tag. Now, some of these tags, like the body tag, I go like, if I modeled it off the body tag, I would have my opening paragraph tag here, and then the closing one here, and then I'd have my paragraph indented a little bit in there. And, this is a paragraph. But now sometimes I actually do that because it does help organize some stuff. But typically what you'll see is that this is just in line with everything else. Okay. So it's sort of in line. So this is how we would write a paragraph. So now if I save this, okay, and I refresh, we'll actually start to see something showing up in the browser. And I've made my text editor pretty large, so I'm going to make this large as well so you can see it. So this is a paragraph. So this is actually twice the size of what it would normally look like in your browser, but for the video purpose, make it a little bit larger. Okay. Now I can put a comment here. Okay. Paragraph tags. So if you're following along, I would encourage you to pause the video if I get a little bit ahead of you and make comments as you go. So that'll help you to kind of like organize the stuff, and you can look back at it later and go, oh yeah, okay, those were paragraph tags. Now, again, if I save this, that comment is not showing up, right? But if I view the page source, then, look, I see how that comment paragraph tags, okay? All right. So let's keep going. And the next thing is heading tags. So I'm going to do a little fancy trick with my text editor where I do some copying and pasting. So I'm going to yank and then paste. So we have 6 of these now. Okay. Now, one thing I'm going to do, and the reason I did that is I'm just changing the numbers here. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Okay, and what am I doing? Okay, so now I want to make a little bit, we'll write something to describe this. So this H2 is a heading, but it's a subset of H1. Okay, and let's just copy some of this stuff. So I'm just going to copy a little bit of this and go down here. All right, so that's a subset of H1. This one is a subset of H2, and basically so on and so forth. Okay, this one's a subset of H3, subset of H4, and this last one is going to be a subset of H5. Okay, so each of these headings are under the other headings. So H1 is the most important. You want to be descriptive when you do your HTML, so that the search engines will kind of know what is most important of your content. And then the H4, H5, and H6 are a little bit less important. Websites typically use H1 through H3, sometimes H4, not so much the H5 and the H6. Now, there are browser defaults for the size of these. I would not use these to change the size of your heading. I would do that through CSS styling. But so let's just save this, and then let's just refresh this page, and you'll notice these headings. The first heading is the largest, and we go to the 6th heading, which is the smallest. Okay, so that's a little bit about our headings. All right, so and let's make a comment. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is divs. All right. So a div is a section of the site, and the div is kind of the generic section of the site. Now, in HTML5, you have semantic tags, which we'll get into later. But the semantic tags are, they kind of a little bit more descriptive, and you'll see this later. We have article, we have section, stuff like that, main, aside. But a div is kind of a generic section. Okay, so with those tags, typically what you'll do is you'll have the content of the div indented below it. Okay, and then you're going to close your div like that. All right. Now, if I just go ahead and save this, this isn't going to look much different with what I've done than the paragraph above. But I'm going to show you something in a moment here. And so we'll just make a comment right and left divs. And I will do a very small bit of inline CSS to show you how this might work. So this is a little bit beyond this course, but it's showing you the power of divs. So, okay, so we're going to have this div with a width of 100%. And then below it, we're going to have a div with a style. And the width is going to be 50%. And the float is going to be left. And we're also going to have a border that we're going to have that is 1 pixel, solid, and the color black. And so that's what that code is doing there. Okay, and then within that, we're going to have a paragraph and say something like, here is some stuff on the left. Okay, and then we're going to close out that div. Then we're going to have another div with the style. The width is going to be slightly less this time. Let's go 45%. The float is going to be to the right. Border is going to be 1 pixel, solid. And we'll do this color black again. And then we'll have a paragraph there. Here is some stuff on the right. Okay. And we'll close that paragraph and then close that div and then close the other div. Okay. And then below that, well, actually, let's just do that for right now. We'll save that and refresh. And you'll see these two divs. Okay. They don't take the full width because you have the stuff on the left. Here's the stuff on the right. Okay, so it's organized on the screen a little bit differently. Okay. All right, let's keep going. And I'm going to just do something here. I'm going to have a div with the style of clear both. And that's going to clear both the floats above. And the reason I'm just going to do that is just so if you don't do that, some of the stuff might get kind of crammed in between the divs and it's going to get confusing. All right, so now we're going to talk about lists. Let me go up here. All right, so let's make a comment, lists. And the first list we're going to talk about is an ordered list. Okay, so we're going to start an ordered list with the tag OL, and then we're going to indent a little bit and have a tag LI and a closing tag LI. Now I'm going to make a few list items, so let me just go here. We're going to write list item. Okay, and then I'm going to yank and paste this line a few times, and then we're going to close this ordered list. All right, so now if I refresh, I'll see that I have a list item, and each of these list items has a number in front. Okay, so it's ordered by number. That's an ordered list. Okay. After that, we're going to talk about an unordered list. Okay, so the only difference with that is that we're basically going to have the same thing. So I'm going to go down and copy this, and we're going to change one thing to make this an ordered list. So instead of OL, ordered list, we're going to have UL, unordered list. All right. So UL is unordered list, OL is ordered list. Okay, and I'm going to save, and the default when I refresh it is to just have bullets instead of numbers for the list items. Okay, so it's a bulleted list if you want to think of it that way. Okay, next thing I want to talk about briefly is tables. So if you're organizing some data. All right. Okay, so with tables, we start off with a table tag, and then within that, you can have this optional table head tag, where I have a table row, so TR is table row, and then I have table head tags inside. I'm going to make a couple of these. Okay, and well, 3 would be a few of those. So let's say we have something like name, and then we have age, and then we have birth date. Okay, and then we'll close that table row, close the table head, and then we'll start the table body. Okay, and within the table body, we're going to have a table row, and we'll have table data, not table heads. So I'm going to paste a few of those in there, and then before I finish this, I'm going to close out this table row, and we're going to have maybe a few more of these. Okay, so we have a few table rows, and then we're going to close out the table body and then close out the table. Now you can also have a table footer. I'm not going to do that in this one. That would be T foot. Okay. Then I'm going to put some data in there. So let's have Tim. Let's say he's 15 years old and he was born in 91 somehow. He's 15 still. Okay, and then we'll have Joe. He's 12, and Joe is even better because he was born in 71. And then we're going to have Sally. Sally aged kind of quickly, and she's 22, but was born this year somehow. Okay, so yeah. Now that data, if you take a look at that data, people might be like, that's a little bit wrong. But this is how we can organize data. So I'm going to refresh, and we're going to get our data in a nice little table. Now, they used to, way back in the day, used to use tables to organize your websites. That you shouldn't do anymore, but you can still use tables to organize data. And with CSS, you can style tables where each of the cells has a border, and the border has a border, and it looks all cool. And maybe you can have some cells be gray, others white, kind of alternating if you want. But again, this is just a course covering the HTML. All right. Okay, so that's tables. And next I'm going to talk about some font things. So we'll start with emphasis. Okay, so with emphasis, let's start a paragraph here. Now I'm going to do this in a way where I have the opening and closing paragraph tag like that, and then stuff indented inside, just to kind of show you, because otherwise it might get a little confusing. So if I do a strong tag, this is bold and this is emphasized. Okay. If I do an emphasis tag, this is italic. Now sometimes your text editor will show you that. So actually, let me just switch my color. Let's see if Code Dark doesn't do it, but I think one I was using this morning, Monakai. Monakai is not doing it either. Well, maybe it was Molokai. One of them was actually doing, let's go back, Molokai. Okay, Molokai's not wanting to do it either. Anyways, so sometimes your text editor will actually italicize stuff, but this one isn't. It's not doing it today for whatever reason. Okay. All right. So you can also have bold and italic, but not have it emphasized. So for the search engines, they wouldn't really know this word is emphasized, but it would be bold. So this is also bold, but not emphasized. And this tag, this is italic, but not emphasized. The trend is to go away from that, from the B and the I tags. So just keep that in mind. But if we refresh and we go down, we can see this is bold, this is italic, and this is bold but not emphasized. And this is italic but not emphasized. Now notice that I have those on different lines, but they'll show up all in the same line here. Okay, so in a little bit, I'm going to show you how to do a line break, but we're not there yet. Okay, some other tags we want to talk about inside of the paragraph. So we do a U tag. This is underlined. Okay, this is getting to be an old tag too, because you could do text decoration of underline, which is a CSS thing. The trend is not to mix what each thing is supposed to do. So in front-end design, for instance, the HTML is just supposed to be the structure. The CSS is the styling, and the JavaScript is the functionality. Okay, so we want to have a separation of concerns is the way they look at it. So the underline, that's kind of like a tag that's styling it, so they're trying to move away from that, move that to the CSS. We have another one here, this S tag. This is Strikethrough. Okay, so another thing, this is a styling thing. And then we also have this one, the small tag. This is small text. Now, they also had a big tag, but that's deprecated at this point. Okay, so let's refresh. And we can see this is underlined, this is Strikethrough, and this text, I don't know if you can see it, but it is a little bit smaller than the other text. Okay, so that's a little bit different. All right. All right, so next up, we're going to go and have superscript text. So this is superscript text. It means it's raised up a little bit, and then we're going to have a fraction. We'll make it a fraction. This is subscript text. Okay, and I'll save that, and we'll refresh, and you see the one is superscripted, one is subscripted, which helps if you want to do fractions. So if I want to do, say, 3/5, okay, and I refresh, I get that fraction 3/5. So when you're doing a fraction, you might use superscript and subscript. Okay, you also might do something like use a variable. So if I want to say the variable x, that's going to equal let me go back here. That's going to equal that. So now if I refresh, you can see that the x is a little bit italicized. Okay, so it's a little bit different. All right. Let's go through some other things you can learn. Now, this is not in any particular order, but so this was text stuff. Now I want to talk about a little bit about time. So you may want to let the browser know when an article was written. You can use a time tag. So let's talk about HTML2, which was back in the day. That was published. And I can use a time tag and then use a date time if the browser supports it with the year 1995, then the month, November 24th, and then I can just put the date in there. I don't know why I had a comma there. I don't need the comma. So November 24th, 1995, and then close the time tag. And close my paragraph tag. Okay, now if I save this and refresh, I'm not going to really see any difference in the text, but if I view the page source, so if I view the page source here and go all the way to the bottom, we'll see that date time tag there. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit about time. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about quotes. Okay, so sometimes you may have to use quotes. So let's talk about one. Jimmy said, and we're going to have a quote. That's a Q tag. So we're starting the quote. My name is Jimmy. It's a quote from Jimmy. That is what he said. I don't know. Now notice I didn't put any quotes here. And when I refresh, you notice it adds the quotes around the quote. So Jimmy said, my name is Jimmy. This is what I said. Okay. So we can also do block quotes. So let's do a block quote. And I'm going to say to be or not to be, that is the question. And let's close out the block quote. Okay, and let's just, all right, and we'll save. And then we have a block quote and block quote. And sometimes the browser will style this a little differently, sometimes not, okay? Let's just shift this down. And, so this is the style at 100%. That's interesting. Okay. And the browser isn't styling it in any way, but sometimes it will indent it for a block quote. I'm just making sure I spelled everything correct. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So after that, let's talk about, why? Because I spelled quote wrong. Okay. All right, so now you see the block quote is moved in a little bit. So make sure you spell your tag right. So the block quote, the browser naturally styles it slightly differently. Okay, next I want to talk about citation. So if you're writing a technical paper, you may want to use a citation. So I'm going to start a paragraph. I learned of this quote from, and then I'm going to have a cite tag, and I would do a link. I'll show you a link in a little bit. But actually, we can talk about it now. The Href is where the link goes. In this case, it's https in Wikipedia. So I'm typing the address of where I learned of this to be or not to be, although I knew of it before. And wiki, then slash, then to underscore b. I think there's a comma, underscore, or underscore not to be. Okay, we'll close the quote, and then inside of that, I'll put Wikipedia. Okay, and then close my link, which is that A tag, then close the cite tag, and I'll say page, and close my paragraph tag. So let's refresh, and all right, and you'll see that Wikipedia, let's make this bigger again. So Wikipedia is, it's italicized. The citation is italicized, okay? Now, if I clicked on this, this would go to the page, okay? Because I also included a link. We'll talk a little bit more about links in a little bit, all right? We can also mark text, okay? So in that case, start a paragraph again. So this is, and we'll just do a mark tag. This is, and we'll say marked text. Close out the mark, and then close out the paragraph. Okay, let's refresh, take a look at that. So you see the marked text is kind of highlighted in that yellow. It's a natural different styling of it. Okay, so this is all the browser styles, the browser styles for plain HTML. Okay, and typically if you did nothing, like no styling, this is what the page you would see. Obviously I styled this a little bit, but it'd all be along the left, and it would be like this. Okay, let's make this bigger again so you can see it well. All right, after that, let's talk about sample output. Okay, so we could have sample output from a computer. So if the computer says, and then we do a samp tag, critical error, your hard drive is exploding. Okay, and then we'll close the sample output. We'll say that is bad. All right, and close our paragraph. Okay, let's save that. We'll refresh. And you'll notice that the font is styled a little bit differently. Okay, it's styled like stuff coming out. Okay. Okay. All right. I also want to talk about definitions. So definitions. So start a paragraph. Then the word that we're defining, we do a DFN tag. So I'm going to define HTML. Close the DFN tag, and then say HTML is hypertext markup language that is used to structure the web, something like that. That's a Tim definition. That's what I would say it is. Okay. After definitions, I want to talk about spans. Okay. So a span, and I'm just going to write, this is normal paragraph text. Okay. We're still keeping in the paragraph. So this is going to be beside each other. And I'm going to do a span with a style. And we're going to make the color red. This is text in the red span. Say, close out the span tag. Let's have another span, and we'll do some styling. And we're gonna transform the text all to uppercase. So text transform uppercase. This is a little bit of CSS, but I just want to show you the point here. So this is uppercase text. We'll close out that span, and we'll close out our paragraph. All right, and let's refresh. And you'll see this is normal paragraph text. This is text in the red span, and this is uppercase text. Okay, so you can use spans to style parts of text a little bit differently. When you learn more about CSS, you can do classes and that kind of thing to help style it. Okay. All right, let's talk about code. So if I do a website, a lot of this is on code. So if you want to illustrate code in your HTML, let's start a paragraph, and I'm going to do just say something. Next is some code. And then we're going to do a code tag. So code, and then to do, like, if I just put HTML, this isn't going to show up because it's going to be an HTML tag. That's the way the browser is going to read it. The way I get the left bracket is I do that symbol, and HTML, and then for the right bracket, it's GT, that symbol. Let me just copy this and paste it. No, I didn't want to do that. And close my code tag and close my paragraph tag. And then between this opening and this closing tag here, I would say something like, this is where your HTML goes. Okay. And let me save that, and it'll look a lot different because you see these ampersands and these special signals, but symbols. And so you see next is some code, and then you have this HTML. It's formatted kind of like the critical error, the sample output, and you see this HTML. This is where your code goes. And you notice that LT and the GT with the ampersand and the semicolon, that gave me these symbols here. Okay, so one thing you could do is you could do a little styling, like in your style sheet, and say, okay, well, the style is going to be, the background is going to have a color of black. Then the color is going to be, white, something like that. And maybe even increase the padding. The padding is going to be 15 pixels. This is all CSS, but just to illustrate how you might make it a little different. So, okay, next is some code. This is where your code goes. Okay, so this is code now. All right. So that's a code tag in HTML. Next up, and this is one you're going to use a lot more than probably code, but again, this YouTube channel, I talk a lot about code. So this next one is the links. So you want to be able to link to certain things. So, and we talked a little bit about that, but that was the A tag, so, or the anchor tags. We'll start with a tag, and then we have to have where it's going to go. So let's link to Google. All right, and I'll say this is a link to Google. And you notice how the text is colored a little differently in my text editor. And then below that, I'm going to have the same link. So we're going to copy this address. Okay. But this time we're going to type in target equals underscore blank. This is a link to Google that opens in a new window. Okay. We're going to close out that anchor tag. All right. And let's refresh. All right. So we see this is a link to Google. So if I click on it, well, we go to Google. Cool. Now, this next one, this is a link to Google that opens in a new window. And you'll see it opens a new window. All right. Okay. So you notice with those two links, they were on the same line, even though in my markup, I had them vertically above each other. So now I'm going to talk about how to get line breaks. So let's just say line breaks in a paragraph. All right, so let's start our paragraph and say this is one line, and we want this to be on the next line. Okay, I'm going to save that, and I'll show you what happens. You refresh, it's all on the same line. So to get to the next line, what we need to do is go to the end here and put a line break. So it's just this BR tag. Now that's a self-closing tag, so we don't have to put a closing tag. Now, in previous versions of HTML, you would see a slash with the BR like this. You don't even have to do that in HTML5. You can just do it like that. And now I refresh, and you'll see that they're on different lines. So that's a line break, okay? Next, I'm going to talk about a horizontal rule. Okay, so a horizontal rule is going to give you a horizontal line going across the page. So let's start with the paragraph. So here's a paragraph. And we'll have another paragraph. Here's another paragraph. Okay, we're going to save that, and we'll refresh. And you'll see that paragraphs have some margin in between, some padding around them, so they're separated a little bit. But let's say I wanted to have a line separating that part of the page from the next part of the page. I would use a horizontal rule. So horizontal rule is like the break tag. It's just HR. Okay, and older versions, you'd have the slash here. You don't need that for HTML5. And now when I save it and refresh, I've got this horizontal line between the two. So that's a horizontal rule. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about, well, many other things I want to talk about, but I want to talk now about non-breaking spaces. Okay, so let's, this is and I'm just going to make a bunch of spaces, paragraph, and some more spaces, and some more spaces in HTML. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I look at this in the browser? Do you think there'll be spaces? The answer, let's check. All right, so we're going to refresh, and there are no spaces, okay? So HTML only respects the one space, and after that, it ignores the other spaces, okay? So if I wanted to break apart the text, I would have to do this ampersand NBSP. That's a non-breaking space. So let's do a bunch of those. I'm going to yank that and then paste it a bunch of times. All right, this is a bunch of spaces, okay? So now when I save this and refresh, I'm going to have that big gap with that amount of spaces. So I would have to do a non-breaking space for each space in between. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about images in HTML. All right. So to have an image, we want to start with an image tag is self-closing, so you don't have to do the closing tag afterwards. But we'll do image and then the source src equals, and then within the quotes we're going to put the path to the image, and we also want alt text with so if the image doesn't render, it doesn't show up, the screen readers can see what the picture should have been. So it helps with website accessibility and that kind of stuff, and search engine optimization. All right, so we got our image tag. I'm just going to save it now, and obviously we don't have anything in there, so we're not going to see anything. All right, now if I put in an image that I don't have yet, so images /cat.jpg, and I save it and refresh, there's still nothing showing up. Okay, I don't have that. Oh, sorry, it's going a little bit all over the place. I don't have that folder. Okay, all right. No matter how many times I save it, I don't have it. But I did download some photos earlier, and we got this photo here. I'm gonna copy this, and we're gonna go into our crash course and make a folder called images, and then I'm going to paste into the folder that, and I'm going to change this. This was off Pexels. I'm just going to change the name to cat. Okay. And then I'm going to refresh, and you see this cat show up. Okay. So that's the cat image. And however big the image actually is, let's go to regular size. So the cat image was that size that I downloaded it. So it's not styled any differently than what I downloaded it as. Okay. Okay, so if I want to change that, let's go here, I'm going to go back to my editor, and I want to include the alt tag, so I would say something like a cat sleeping. Okay, now let's make this a few more times. So this time I'm going to actually, and this is a little deprecated because you don't want to be styling in the HTML, but you can do this. So let's say the width is 200, the height equals 400. Okay, I'm going to save this one, and we're going to get a stretched image. So it's not really automatically resized because I compacted the width but made the height larger. So if I wanted to change that and keep the aspect ratio, what I could just do is just enter in the width, okay, that I wanted it to be. Okay, and refresh, and then you'll see this picture here, the third picture. Now it lines up beside it, but you'll see it's like the bigger one, and it kept its aspect ratio, okay, for the photo. All right, so that is a way to resize if you don't know CSS. Okay, I also want to talk about audio elements. Okay, so we can also have audio elements. So in HTML5. So we can do that with an audio tag and have a source. And in this case, we want to have controls. That'll give the controls. And then we can have a source equal to then the path, okay, like the photo. So I'm going to have to make a folder called sounds, and then I'm going to have a sound called laser mp3 in there. And the audio tag, I do have to close it out as well. So I'm going to just do this. Okay, we'll refresh, and we'll see we don't have anything to play right now. But we do have this audio thing come up. Okay, so I'm going to go back into here and go into my downloads. And I do have this laser gun. I'm going to copy this and go into my Linux files, go into my crash course, and make a folder called sounds. Okay, and then within there, I'm going to go in here and paste it and just rename this laser. Okay, and then we can close that out. So now, if I refresh, you notice it goes from grayed out to being able to play something. So now I can play that, and it will play the sound of the. I don't know if you guys can pick that up, but it is playing the sound of the laser shooting, which is something I got off the YouTube audio free library. Okay, so that's audio elements. Okay, all right. So I want to also talk about inline frame elements. All right, so iframes. So iframes are where you can actually take content from another site and put in the actual other site. So I would start with iframe and then the source. And let's do my site, Unkert Development. So unkertdevelopment.com. It's going to be the source. And then I can control the width and the height. So the width is, let's make it, I don't know, 800. Actually, let's make it a little bit less. Let's make it 800. The height, let's make it 600. And then we have to also close the iframe tag. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll save that. Okay. And refresh. And let's go back down to normal size. So to a size of 100. Okay. And right before the iframe, I'm just going to add a line break so it starts on a couple line breaks so it starts on the new line. So let's refresh. And so it's below this. So you can see my website here. So I'm actually accessing my website from another site. Okay. So I can scroll through my website on this iframe, which is pretty cool. And then I could, even play a YouTube video that's on some other site. Okay. So that's an iframe for you. All right. Okay. So that's kind of a cool thing. And let's talk about embedding YouTube. Okay. So to embed YouTube videos, what you're actually going to do is you're going to go to YouTube. Okay. And let's move this around. Go to my channel here. And let's pick a video to embed. Let's look at creating a landing page with Elwin CSS. So I'm going to click on the video, go to share, and then go to embed. And I'm just going to click to copy the embed code. Now you notice you could start it at a certain time. You would put that in and then recopy. All right, so I'm going to go back to my text editor and I'm just going to now paste that stuff in there. Let's just move that over. Okay, and now if I go back to my page here and hit Control R to refresh and scroll down, you'll see that the video pops up and now I can play the video on my site. Okay, so that's a little bit about embedding YouTube videos. All right, going back to some text stuff, let's talk about abbreviations. Okay, so if I start a paragraph tag, then I'm going to use the abbreviation tag. So abbreviation, and I'm going to give it a title to the tag. It's going to be hypertext markup language. And then I'm closing my opening tag there. Then I'm going to say HTML and then close the abbreviation tag. And I would say something like stands for hypertext markup language. Okay. Now, if I go and save that and refresh, you'll see, let me make this bigger again. Okay, so right here we can then hover over it, and you'll see that the title Hypertext Markup Language shows, and you'll see these little underlines. That's the way the browser styles an abbreviation. Okay, so that's abbreviations. Now we're going to start to talk about semantic tags in HTML5. So these help with SEO. All right, so the first one I want to talk about is an article tag. That surrounds an article. So an article tag surrounds an article. Now, not everyone does this, but if you really want to get your HTML really good for SEO, you would be including these. Okay, so if I refresh that, it's just going to look like a normal paragraph. So an article tag surrounds an article. Yeah. All right. Next tag I want to talk about, I'm going to go in alphabetical order here, is an aside tag. So we'll do an aside tag. Inside of an aside tag, this is not the main content. This is sometimes used for the sidebar. So it tells the search engine that this isn't as important as the main content. Okay. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about a footer and a header. So a footer. So that's what it sounds like. So footer tag. You might have a paragraph, something like copyright, and then the copyright symbol, but it's the footer of the website, or it can be a footer of other sections of the website. It doesn't have to be the footer. Okay, and then we'd say copyright 2021, Timothy Unkert, all rights reserved. Okay, whoops, close my paragraph tag, and then I want to close my footer tag. Okay, now we can also have the header. Okay, so the header tag is where you have the top of the visible document, so the top of the visible document, or it could be the top of a section could have a header too. Okay, you could have like the header. Sometimes in Bootstrap you have the header of a card. Okay, right. So you can have headers of sections. Okay, now the important part is the main. This is so in between the main tag is where your main content will go. It tells the browser that this is important. So whatever you want your site to rank on, make sure you have a lot of that in the main tag, not necessarily in the aside tag, although it wouldn't hurt to have it in the aside tag, but I think the main tag is the most important. You can also have a section, and it's like it sounds. This is a section of your website. Okay, so it's a little bit more specific. Before they have the section, you use a div, but now it's a little bit more specific. Okay, so those are some semantic tags that you can use in HTML5. The next thing I want to talk about is forms. Okay, so to start a form, you're going to have a form tag. Typically, it's going to have some action. We're not going to cover that in here because that's back-end stuff with PHP or a different back-end language, but we're going to have some kind of action. You're going to have some kind of method. It's usually get or post. Again, that's for the back-end stuff, but within the form, you're going to have a label. And usually it's for something. So let's say label for full name. And then we'd say something like full name, and then close the label tag. And then you'd have an input, and the input might have the ID of full name, the name of full name, a type. So this would be a text. You have different types for IDs, and you want to actually with the input, it's self-closing, so you don't have to put a closing tag. You don't want to do that actually. And you might actually want to have a line break here, and then you could have maybe another label for, say, the email. And you put email in between the tags, the opening and closing tag, and then the input ID would be email. Name is email. Type is email. That means they actually have to put in something that looks like an email, something with the @ sign, the .com, or it's not going to work. Okay, I'll break tag here, and then do one more, a label for message. Okay, and we say something like message, and then close the label. And then below that, you wouldn't have an input, but you might have a text area. Okay, and you have an ID of message, name of message, and you might have the amount of columns it spans. So in this case, 30, the amount of rows it spans, so 10. Although you could style it through your CSS. Now the text area, you do have to close it. Then we have a break tag, a line break tag there. And then the last thing you'd want to have is an input type of submit. So that would give you some submit button. You want to have an ID of submit, a name of submit, and we're almost done. And then you want to close out your form tag. Okay, and we'll refresh our site. Go on down, and we've got our form here. Now it's not very well done, but now if I go up here into these inputs here for like the name and the email, and I type required, there's a little HTML you can use to validate your form. So I can type required here. So you need to put in a name and an email. So let's say I just put in an email, tunk at, I don't know, I'm just going to make one up, gmail.com, and a message. This is Tim. Hey, how are you? Okay, type a message and go to submit. It's submitted. Did I save it? Let me save that. It should make it required. Okay, because I didn't put in the name. Let me refresh. Continue. Let's try that again. Okay, and then put in some message, hit submit. Okay, so I didn't save it before, but it says, please fill out this field. So it won't let you submit the form until you put your name. And, same thing with email. If I go to submit, it says, please fill out this form. So let's do tunk at gmail.com. And then I can click and it's going to submit. Okay. I'm just going to stop that and refresh. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit about forms. Let's see what else I want to cover. Oh, yeah. Nav menus. Okay. So, whoops. I don't know why I closed that out. So let me open back up. Okay. I think we're using, let's get this full screen. We're using desert, right? So, all right. So change that back. Okay. So there's a lot of color schemes for text editors you can play with. I think I have mine set to Monokai for this one. But anyway, so next up, let's talk about the nav menu. All right, so typically that would be in a header. So you have a header, then you have, say, a nav menu. Then within that, you might have an unordered list, then a list item with a link. Now, if you put a hashtag, it doesn't go anywhere. Some link, and but let's delete this and replace it with Google. And we'll say something like Google, okay? And then make a few more. Let's make this Bing. Let's make this one Yahoo. And let's make this one Facebook, something like that. Oops. And close out our nav menu. Okay, so that lets the browser know it's navigation. I'm going to refresh, and we've got our navigation menu here. Now we could style this to look like a more modern menu, but if you're just doing a blog in HTML, you could have a little menu at the top of each of your pages, and it would work just fine. Everyone seems to need to throw up a million ads and everything for their blog, but if you're doing just an academic blog, you might want to just do less of the styling. Okay, so I'm going to go through another thing with the menu, where it's the menu tag, and this is experimental. So not all the browsers support this one. I would use Nav for the most part, but okay, let's take this and paste it here. And so we have this Nav menu, and instead of Nav, we'll put in menu. So an opening and closing menu tag. Save it, okay, and refresh. All right, and so you see it styles it a little bit differently in the browser, but it's also a menu. The other thing is some of the older texts like have pre-formatted text, okay, where you can include stuff like ASCII art. We want to keep this in the body. So I just want to go down, make some room. All right, so we'll talk about pre-formatted text. If you've ever used WordPress, you notice there's a pre thing where you can do pre-formatted text. So to do pre-formatted text, we start with pre and we close with pre, and then we can put our pre-formatted text in there. So let's go and find an ASCII art generator. Go here. No, I want to type something, so I'm going to just type my name, Tim, and go to big money, and let's see if we can copy this. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. All right, and I'm going to go here and just nope, I didn't want to do that. I just want to paste it. Okay, so I pasted this pre-formatted text in here. Now, typically, if I tried to do this in a paragraph, it would not work well. Okay, I'm going to save this, and let's go to our page and refresh. Okay, and you see this pre-formatted text. Now, this would be the same size if I brought this back down to normal. So you see, there's my name, pre-formatted text. Let's just, to demonstrate, let's show you what would happen if I try this between paragraph tags. Let me go here and copy it again. Okay, and all right, I'm going to save it and refresh. And because we submitted the form, I keep having to do this now. So that does not look good. Okay, so between the paragraph tags, it doesn't work. You have to do it between the pre-formatted tags. So I'm going to actually take this out. All right. So that's pre-formatted text. And let's start with a summary. So about what this was about, this crash course. So I'm going to use this tag called this details tag. And then within that, I'm going to put a summary. Okay. And just say something in summary. This was a crash course in HTML in 2021. So HTML5. Let's move this so you can see it. For additional resources, please visit, and I'm going to give you the link to Mozilla, and I want to open this in a separate window. So we're going to target equals blank. Okay, and let's go to the Mozilla HTML reference. Okay, so I'm going to just copy that, and where the link is here, let's go and paste it. Okay. All right. So we've pasted in that link. We want to now close out the summary tag and close out the details tag. And let's refresh our page. Okay, and so you notice this little arrow, and technically we could knock stuff down and go down, but then we have this link. And so if I open the link, it's going to open this reference page where you can reference all the tags. So you can go through here and introduction to HTML, HTML elements. You have them all in alphabetical order. They show which ones are deprecated. You see ones that I haven't used, like base font and all that kind of stuff.